difference. Um, you know, places geographically have almost all reported a very similar creature.
Right.
So they're seeing something.
Right.
We just don't know what it is.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully we can get some sort of video evidence, photographic evidence, or just catch a live specimen. Whatever this is. If this is a hoax, then we'll catch it. If it's not something weird, hopefully we be able to catch it. Don't go out shooting. Like innocent people could be hurt, but yeah, let's. This needs to be investigated further, and if there's any more sightings of it, we'll update you here on Weekend Weird or something major happens. So yeah, that's the Chicago Mothman sightings. Let's go to our second and final story. If you remember back a couple of years ago, we did the story of the Kelly-Hopkinsville encounter, one of our most popular episodes. We discussed the incident in Kelly-Hopkinsville, Kentucky, Christian County in 1955 of a couple of families being terrorized, they say, in the middle of in the night by mysterious little green creatures terrorizing their home. And that's where the term little green men came from. So if you're curious about that story, hearing about that, you can go back and listen to that episode of Weekend Weird. And again, it's one of the most popular episodes that we've recorded. But apparently they have, to certain people, come back to different parts of Kentucky. And there is a documentary series out on YouTube right now called Heller, where a group of paranormal investigators go out into Heller, Kentucky, where one of the main new sightings have taken place, to investigate. Now, mind you, this is filmed. This documentary is filmed a little bit different. They don't actually catch anything on video, but it is very eerie and creepy. Them investigating this is a very good series. I've gotten through half of it. I'm trying to finish the first season. It's already on the second season, and I suggest you go out and watch it. It's on YouTube right now. Just type in Heller, and they'll have all the episodes out on that. But it really stems from pretty much a letter an email that was sent to a gentleman back in June 2012, saying that he was frightened. He claims he was frightened by a group of small three-toed creatures that emerged from a mine shaft, and it was terrorizing his rural Kentucky home. And the headline was like, "Is the Kentucky Goblins come back?" Now, Heller is in a different part of Kentucky than Kelly-Hopkinsville, but there are mines going throughout the state of Kentucky, and what the theory is that these mines are somehow connected. So what I want to read to you is the first letter that was sent into Planet Weird Investigations that they received from a gentleman who claims his name was David, and he sent in this letter detailing his problems. This is the first email. We're going to read that right now. Hello, my name is David. I received your contact information through a mutual acquaintance who assures me that you are well equipped to investigate particular problems. Furthermore, I believe you may have interest in these events beyond any comprehension that I'm prepared to deliver in order to have these issues sorted. For the past 6 months, I've been living in a rural home located on the border of West Virginia and Kentucky, where my family is nightly assaulted by creatures that I have come to believe are of an extraterrestrial origin. These beings appear to be the size and stature of a small child, devoid of any facial features save for large, oily eyes and lipless mouths. They frighten my children by peering through their bedroom windows, chirping at one another. They actively attempt to enter my home in the middle of the night. Last month, they took my dog. The police refused to provide any further assistance, attributing the problem to wild animals and forwarding my complaints to the State Game Commission. I believe they're coming from an abandoned mine located on the edge of my property. Although I'm armed, I'm afraid that I'm far too frightened to enter the mine by my lonesome and cannot convince any sympathetic friends to accompany me. Throughout, I cannot blame them. I am convinced that the only answer is to collapse the mine. I believe this is where we can mutually benefit one another. If you are prepared to assist me in this manner, I can offer you permission to record and document these events on the condition of anonymity. I can guarantee you evidence of these creatures, which I assure you are not wild animals. Please respond ASAP. Thank you. What do you think?
Who did he write this to?
He wrote this to Planet Weird Investigations, which they, from what I known about them, they research ghosts. They don't do UFOs.
Okay. And has there been any reply to it?
Well, this is the second one. He replied saying that he could be. He tells them that we only do with ghosts, but I think there's something to help you. But there's a second email that he sent.
Mm-hmm.
Here it is. Thank you for the prompt response. I do not blame you for being skeptical of my story. The people were a little skeptical. I appreciate you keeping an open mind about my situation. I'm more than happy to provide you as much information as I'm able. I was given your contact information through a man by the name of Terry Wentz. This is the editor's note. I left his name untouched due to its irrelevance and the fact that I don't believe to be a real person. We'll come back to this. When these disturbances first began occurring, I was only inclined to confide in a personal friend who I knew had fringe interest. He offered to share my concerns with a man that had dealt with some similar experience in previous years. I accepted his offer. Within a week, I was informed that this gentleman had long since retired from pursuits of this kind, but was willing to provide me with contacts who may be willing to help. This is how I came to contact you. I do not have any answers to why other than referrals and recommendations from the gentleman that I do not know personally. I'm under the impression that you could answer that question. I am located in Pike County, just outside the town of Heller, Kentucky. Heller is roughly 30 to 60 minutes from the border of Virginia and West Virginia, respectively. Most of Pike County is made up of small towns and rural communities. It is not uncommon to go days without seeing my closest neighbor. I moved to this area for peace and quiet, which I received neither. I've lived in this area for just under 7 months, and in that time, the majority of the harassment has occurred within the past 3. I did not become aware of any strangeness until early December. All throughout was only when I began to keep a record of these events. At first, it was merely strange tracks in the snow around my home. I initially imagined that they were some kind of animal, although they closely resembled a human footprint, minus the heel. At the time, I was under the impression that it was simply a strange creature. It wasn't until weeks later that I began to suspect that I was dealing with a number that I thought were individuals hazing me upon my arrival to the area. At this point, I was incapable of keeping my dog outdoors overnight. Any attempt to leave her unleashed would result in her barking herself hoarse until she was allowed to come back inside. In the weeks leading up to this particular evening, I had awoken to find my shed doors open on several occasions, many of my children's toys missing or moved, and my yard in general disarray. I had already given a report to the police, who were making it increasingly clear that we were not interested in my case, barring physical harm or large-scale theft. The second week of January, I'm having breakfast with my family when my 5-year-old begins talking about the kids without hair. With my wife inquiring about these kids, she informed us that she had spent the previous night watching them play in the yard. As you imagine, this was some concern. I asked my daughter what these kids looked like. She told me that they were bald like Grandpa and weren't wearing any clothes. The very same day, I found the wreath that hangs outside of our rear porch stuffed into our mailbox. I purchased and installed motion-activated floodlights the following day, and for a time, the problem was ceased. It wasn't until the end of February that our daughter informed us that the bald kids had returned. I was awoken to the sound of my daughter screaming and rushing to her bedroom, only to meet her halfway down sorry, the hall, halfway, halfway down the hall. When my wife and I were finally able to calm her down enough to be able to speak, she told us the kids were trying to peer into her window, but they couldn't reach and instead taken to tapping on it. She hasn't slept in her own bedroom since, and that morning I was phoned the police for a second time, and they responded by sending a trooper to our residence. I informed him of the regular mischief and how I was unable to let my dog outdoors after dusk, and of the ball kids. We found the ground disturbed under my daughter's bedroom window. The officer informed me, very matter of factly, that they were dealing with an animal and they could be better off contacting the Game Commission than wasting their resources any further. Almost every day for the following week, I could find some evidence that something or someone had been on my property the previous night. Smudges on the window were not uncommon. Stones from the walkway dragged to the other side of the lawn, and I found tears in the screen door. On Wednesday, the 7th of March, I finally witnessed the kids out here for myself. The dog woke me up around 10 or 1:30 a.m., scratching at the back door, whimpering to be let out. I noticed that the motion floodlights were on and went to the kitchen window to check that the shed doors were still closed. When I realized I could see the shadow of an individual cast across my lawn. From the angle that I was positioned at the window, I could not actually see the source of the shadow or the floodlights. The dogs were pacing circles around the back door, and I could hear someone rifling through a box on the porch. Filled with more anger than common sense, the only reaction I could muster was to loudly bang on the window and yell, at which point I heard the screen door of the porch swing open and slam against the house. I heard what I can only describe as chirping at this point. It sounded much like a skunk, if not guttural. I then realized that there were more than two people on my property, and the shadow, which had been reacting as if it didn't know which way to run, was quickly joined by another. For a moment, I watched as the shadows chirped at one another when I noticed a figure out of the corner of my eye. Standing in a flower bed just to the bottom left of my window was a small humanoid figure with sickly pale skin, completely hairless, standing roughly 4 feet. It was looking in the direction of the shadows, and it clearly come from around the left side of my house, opposite the porch. It had not noticed me as far as I could tell. Its face was devoid of features, save for large round eyes, very reminiscent in shape and color of a bird's eye. It had no nose to speak of, and only a small slit for a mouth. It didn't appear to move its mouth as it chirped, sounding more as if the noises originated from its throat. It was certainly not a wild animal, and even more certainly not a child. I was too terrified to move, and I watched as the creature hopped onto the others, and together they scrambled into the woods on the right side of my property. And it was clear there was at least 5 in the group. I have not mentioned this particular incident to my wife, and the only other person I've spoken about these creatures are yourself and a close friend who introduced me to our mutual friend, Mr. Whites. I would prefer to keep things that way and to approach this problem as discreetly as possible. Since that evening, my dog has gone missing from the porch, yet returned, and I can only imagine that his disappearance has to do with these creatures. I've done looking for him during daylight hours, only to find many of my missing belongings scattered in the entrance of an abandoned mine shaft at the far edge of my property. I do not dare go inside. My friend has convinced me that my experience is similar to other visitation experiences, providing me with materials of reference that back up his claims. I'm aware of the outlandish nature of what I've told you, but I'm afraid that I have no explanation of what I've seen, at least at this time. I can see no other option other than to seal the entrance to the mine. I cannot achieve this on my own. I am too frightened to try. I don't dare share this information with others for fear of ruining my career and reputation of my family. I'm prepared to compensate your travel expenses to offer you unrestricted access to whatever recording equipment that you desire, but only on the condition of complete anonymity. Beyond that, I have no other desire than to be rid of this problem. Please inform me of what you would like the photographs of and where to send them. Thank you again.
Ah, that's freaky.
Yes. His description of these goblins, or whatever these things, these bald old people, bitches running around, they don't sound like